Hi, hello, welcome to the Horror Shelf. My name is Donata, and today I will be doing a full review with spoilers on Along the River of Flesh. So you don't have to read this book, because it's kind of horrifying and gross. But it's so good. That's my first spoiler. It's so good. This is part 2 to Gone to See the Riverman by Kristopher Triana, and I will read the back to you first, so you know what it's about. Having escaped from prison, serial killer Edmund Cox returns to his hometown of Killen. Entering the woods with his darlings in his pocket, he begins a new quest along the Hollow River, hoping to make a good one final deal with the Riverman. What Edmund doesn't realize is he's not going alone. Keith Drakeson is one of the police detectives who hunted Cox the first time around, and he considers the killer's escape an insult to his legacy. Determined to capture the killer again, he follows a hunch that leads him to where Edmund grew up. Gary Chapman is a private investigator looking for a missing girl named Jessica Hong, who he believes was one of Edmund Cox's victims. Jessica was writing a paper on the legend of the Riverman before she disappeared. Gary and Keith decide to team up, but they soon encounter a strange girl. June Audrey is a teenage runaway who has come to Killen with a backpack full of articles on Edmund Cox. She too has come to these woods in search of the killer. The three travelers head upriver, each carrying their own dark secret as they pursue a man of pure evil, and a local legend, some say, is behind it all. So, as I said, this is part 2 to Gone to See the Riverman, and in Gone to See the Riverman you follow Laurie, who is absolutely obsessed with this serial killer Edmund, who is in prison, and she's mailing with him, sending letters, visiting him, right? And then one day he's like, okay, I need you to do something for me. I need you to find a key that's alongside this river in a cabin, and I need you to take this key to the Riverman for me. So she does this, and when she meets the Riverman, Edmund gets free because of his help, right? So the Riverman is this folklore entity that can grant your wishes, but it's kind of like making a deal with the devil. You have to sell your soul, and then he will do what you want, will do what you wish for, right? And the Riverman lives on the end of the Hollow River in Killen, which is a really dark forest where a lot of bad things happened. And when you enter his realm, his space, I guess, this river turns into a river of gore. It's like body parts and skin and blood, and everything turns red and orange, and it's horrible. And he's playing this blues music on his guitar, singing and talking in riddles. And it's kind of like a metaphor for the devil and this hell on earth, I guess. Like I read in the synopsis, in this book you follow four main characters. So you have Edmund Cox, the serial killer, who got free in this book. So he got out of prison, and he's planning to return to the Riverman for one final deal. And along the way he's killing some women and he's taking their body parts. I was kind of confused. Why is he taking all these body parts? Is he making a face or something? Because he had Laurie's eyeball and he had some teeth and a part of some girl's lip, right? Turns out he was making a key for the Riverman as a gift. How nice of him, how sweet, what a nice little gift to receive, right? And then you also follow Gary, which is the private investigator, and he's kind of the good guy. He's not really that good, he's very depressed and suicidal, but it's for a reason. He kind of fell into this depression pit because his wife got murdered while she was pregnant. She was a teacher in the middle school. She got killed in a school shooting, so that's where his traumatic past comes from. It's absolutely horrible. So you follow him. He's doing this private investigation, and he meets Keith, which is this bad cop, like a really, really corrupt cop. And in the first half of the book, I was like, okay, I don't like this Keith guy, but I can't really put my finger on why I don't like him, right? But then in the second half of the book, we figure out why he has these bad vibes, and it turns out he's this really corrupt cop who misuses his power to force young teenage girls to do what he wants with them in a 18 plus kind of way. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. He's literally taking advantage of young girls. And then as the book progresses, we find out that he also did some things to children, which is absolutely depraved and horrible. And he has these like weird urges to R-word women. And he's kind of jealous of Edmund, the serial killer, because in Keith's mind, like the serial killer who is this evil bad guy, he gets all the women, while he is a successful policeman and he has to pay for prostitutes, I guess. So he's jealous of a serial killer. It's so strange. He catched Edmund the first time around, and then Edmund got out of prison, and Keith took it personally, like, okay, I caught you and now you got out, so this is now a personal matter and I need to catch you again, right? So he's like, okay, I'm gonna catch a serial killer again and I'm gonna go back to Killen where he came from and I'm gonna go search in the woods. So Keith and Gary run into each other and they find out that they're both looking for Edmund, the killer. So they decide to work together and they're both gonna go into the woods to find this Edmund guy because they know he probably ran to his home, which is this little shack along the river. So they go into the forest, working together, arguing, and then they run into June. And June is this runaway teenage girl with a really dark and horrible past. She shot her grandparents to steal money to get away from them, and her mom is in a psychic hospital, not doing well. She doesn't talk or anything. She's severely traumatized. And she's also in search for Edmund, right? I was confused, like, why is this teenage girl looking for a serial killer? That's so strange. Well, we find out that actually he's her father. He has R-worded her mother and left her so traumatized that now she's in a mental hospital and she can't even look straight ahead. June was her baby that was the result of this event. Oh, disgusting. So she's like, I need to find my dad, even though he's this absolutely horrible evil man. And she's like, okay, I inherited this evil parts from him and I'm also evil and I don't have a mom and now I need to find my dad, right? Okay, so Keith and Gary meet June in the woods and they go together to find Edmund. And at first I was like, why is this private investigator Gary actually in this book? Because I didn't know what he was adding to the story, right? But when they were in the woods, he was the one who convinced June to go with them together because it was unsafe in the woods. And I think if he wasn't there, Keith would have probably done something horrible to her, given his history with teenage girls. Well, okay, so the three of them are in this forest looking for Edmund, and Edmund is looking for the Riverman, also in the same forest. They enter the Riverman's lair, or the Riverman's area, right? So the river turns into blood, everything turns red, everything turns horrible, and actually the way this was described was so atmospheric. I really could visualize everything, and it actually really reminded me of the writing style of Clive Barker. He also does this really gory, atmospheric descriptions of areas and nature and stuff, and that also was really prevalent in this book, which I absolutely loved. They enter the Riverman's lair. The thing is, this Riverman's area, it brings out your deepest, darkest fears and horrors and traumatic events that happened in your life, and it makes it even more horrible, right? So when Gary, the private investigator, whose wife was killed in a school shooting, his pregnant wife, he enters this forest and he sees her standing there. And this was so horrific. She's standing there with all these, it was like an hallucination, right? And she has all these bullet wounds in her body. And she's coming up towards him and he's crying and she's also crying, and then she rips out this dead fetus from her belly, and it's so gnarly. It's so gnarly. Oh man. I think that might have been the worst scene in the whole book for me personally. It was so emotional and then gory and graphic at the same time. It was And then, they find this Riverman. Edmund finds the Riverman first, and then the Riverman is like, okay, your journey isn't finished yet because there are other people in this woods right now that have something to do with you, right? So he goes back and then he finds these people, and then before he finds them, Keith actually kills Gary, which was foreshadowed in the book. Like, he has this urge to shoot Gary so he can do things to June, nasty things, right? He wanted to do that, and then when he is in the Riverman's forest, he actually gets pushed to do so, and he kills Gary. So then it's only Keith and June, and then June runs from him, and she finds Edmund, and then she confesses to Edmund like, oh, I'm your daughter, and then together they bring Keith to the Riverman. And then the Riverman is like, no, Keith, you are also evil, but you didn't bring me anything. You didn't bring me a gift, so you are worse than them. Which was so funny. Like, this absolutely disgusting depraved man comes to the Riverman, and the Riverman is like, you are evil, but you are not as evil as the serial killer because you didn't bring me a gift. Hilarious. And then Keith gets killed by Edmund and June. And Edmund and June decide to team up together, and they're gonna continue Edmund's legacy. So Edmund is going to teach everything he knows about killing to June, and then June can be his follow-up serial killer, and Edmund wants to become the new Riverman. That's how it ends. It was such a wild ride. Like the first half, it was pretty tame. It was more like a detective book with a little bit of gore sprinkled in here and there. But then once the second part started, things went down, and it was a wild ride, and I could not put it down. I read this in one evening. I actually really liked this. I did like the first part more, but this was just because I didn't know about what the Riverman was like, what his forest area looked like, so it was more of a surprise for me, right? The whole first book was more of a surprise to me than this one. That's why I like the first one more. But this one is definitely a really good follow-up. Really, especially if you love the first one and the atmosphere in the first one, then you will really like this one, because you get way more atmosphere in this one, which is so nice. So there were a couple of things that I really liked about this one. So I liked that it started off exactly where the last book ended, which was, so if you read them back to back, it just ends and then continues straight on from there, and it's great. And you even get a little flashback in this one with a short summary what the first book was about, which was great because I kept forgetting Laurie's name, so I had to look back like, who is this woman again? And I could do that in this book, so that was nice. What I actually found terrifying is that all the horror in this book are real life things that happen. You know, they're real life horrors. And yes, Kristopher Triana, he kind of blew it up and made it even more horrifying. But that was the most scary part to me. Like, the Riverman is not scary. You actually don't really know if he's actually evil, right? But especially all the things that Keith did to these young girls and women, and what Edmund did to all of those women that he murdered, that those are things that could happen in real life, right? And also with the school shooting. So that was actually the most scary part to me, those real life things. And I also like that most of the horror came from the traumatic flashbacks that these characters had from their past, you know? It wasn't the things that they were doing in the moment. The most horrible things were things that already had happened, right? And you get these flashbacks and you see why they act the way that they act and how everything led up to this moment in this book. And that was where most of the horror came from, and I really, really loved that. All in all, I absolutely loved this. I did have to think about my life for a while after I finished this, but man, Gone to See the Riverman and Along the River of Flash are such good extreme horror books. You know, it's scary, it's disturbing, it's horrible, but there's a message behind it. It's not just scary to be scary or gory to be gory, you know, it has purpose, and I like that a lot. And I also find the writing style to be absolutely beautiful, even though it's horrible. So if you ask me, I highly recommend this one. Even though on Goodreads people say that the first part was way better, I still think you should absolutely read the second part too if you loved the first one, because you get so much more insight in the Riverman also. Since this folklore-ish entity, right? And you get more backstory and about the songs and about the blues culture and about this folklore story of the Riverman and the people living in the village surrounding the forest, right? So I loved it. It was a 4-star read for me, only because most of the things I already knew what were going to happen, like with the Riverman, for example, because I read the first book, so it wasn't that surprising to me. But it was still really amazing. I think maybe 4.5, right? 4.5, yes. That will be my rating. So that was Along the River of Flash. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope I made sense to you. And most of all, I hope you will read this book, because it's definitely worth your time. Kristopher Triana is an amazing writer. I love this book. I want to read more of him. I think the next one I want to read is They All Died Screaming or Full Brutal. I can't choose yet, so let me know which one of his books I should read next, or if there's another extreme horror book that you want me to read or that you recommend to me, please let me know. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again in the next video. See you soon. Please like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do. And yeah, bye bye.